Now, hopefully we can join our editors in Westminster, Alistair Campbell, political editor of The Mirror, and The Times political editor, Robin Oakley. Good morning, gentlemen. Can you hear us now?
Good morning.
Yes, good. First of all, then, if I could come to you, Alistair, this is a crushing and very surprising defeat, isn't it, for Labour in view of the polls right up to the last moment. How do you account for it?
I don't know. I think in the end, maybe we were all too sophisticated. We assumed that the public wouldn't go for the negative campaigning, and they did. I think also there's no doubt the Tories did a very, very impressive job in getting their vote out. And in all sorts of areas where the Liberals were expected to do better than they did, where Labour were expected to do better than they did, the Tories got their vote out. I mean, take Scotland. It was quite astonishing what the Tories did in Scotland. And that was just one of the many surprises through the night.
Robin, all along Mr Major was saying that he was stone cold certain of winning, but equally he was also certain it was all going to happen at the very last moment. There was going to be this tremendous surge literally in the last few hours. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think the Conservatives were looking back somewhat to the experience of 1987, when a lot of the people who said they were going to vote for the alliance then drifted away back to the Conservatives in the last couple of days of the campaign for fear of what they then saw as the advent of a possible advent of a left-wing Labour government. I think a lot of people thought this time that the same phenomenon would not occur because the work that Neil Kinnock had done in reforming Labour's image would leave people less frightened of the prospect of a Labour government and more willing to stick with a vote for the Liberal Democrats if they drifted away and protest against the Conservatives. And instead, the same thing happened again.
Alistair, sorry to interrupt you there. Mr Kinnock's had 8 years to get it right. It's the fourth successive defeat for Labour. It's curtains for Mr Kinnock, isn't it?
Well, I would imagine that Neil Kinnock is feeling very, very low at the moment, and I think anybody who has any concern within the Labour Party is feeling exactly the same way. Now, what happens now, I thought it was interesting that in both the speeches he's made tonight, first in his constituency and secondly just outside Walworth Road, both which I thought were incredibly dignified performances, he seemed to me to be leaving open the option of him trying to come to some sort of arrangement with his colleagues about a possible succession. I mean, I don't know that. I haven't spoken to anybody because we just don't have time. But I just got the feeling he was thinking his future and thinking, well, maybe I've given it all I've got. I was very, very sad for Neil Kinnock tonight because I actually think he has saved the Labour Party from oblivion, and he's made it, we thought, electable, gets to this point, and it just didn't happen. I think it's very, very sad.
Alistair Campbell, Robin Oakley, thank you both very much indeed for joining us.
Now, the man who masterminded a victorious campaign but who lost his seat in the process, that's Chris Patten, the Conservative Party chairman, is at Conservative Central Office with Vivian White. Vivian.
With me is Chris Patten. Chris Patten, it's been an extraordinarily affecting night for you to have won the election and lost your own seat. How do you feel?
I think it's a wonderful night for the Conservative Party, and what's happened to me is a sideshow in comparison. It's been a great night. It's the first time this century that a party has won 4 election victories in a row. We've got pretty well the same share of the vote as we got in 1987, despite the fact that we've been going through a very difficult recession. We started the campaign 3 points behind. We were told we were fighting a rotten campaign by a lot of journalists who've now got spectacular quantities of egg on their face. We fetch up at the end of the campaign 6 points ahead. I think there are quite a lot of the members of your distinguished profession, though doubtless not you, who have quite a lot of explaining to do to their editors and their readers over the next few weeks, and I'm sure that they will show that brand of Christian humility for which journalists are renowned.
What do you think will characterize this Major administration? It will be his this time.
Yes, I think what will characterize it is what has characterized his campaign, which has been so successful. He's got frightfully good judgment, and when he acts on his judgment, it works. What he's been doing in this campaign is to tell people the truth and talk to people about the things which he believes are terribly important. What this campaign, what this Parliament will be about, in my judgment, is above all stable prices, lower taxes, more encouragement of enterprise, and decent and generous social provision. And he'll also be showing, once again, not least in the second half of the year when he's in the presidency of the European Community, that it's possible to stand up for Britain's national interests while playing a central role in the community.
Chris Patten, thank you.
The time is 6:48 in a moment, the results in your part of Britain, but first the national election headlines. After 619 results, the Conservatives have 321 seats, just 5 short of the winning post. Labour have 269 and the Lib Dems 17. John Major has said that it was a victory for the Conservatives that many had thought beyond his party's grasp. Neil Kinnock has said that he felt a strong sense of disappointment, but he would stay on as Labour Party leader. And Paddy Ashdown said that he was very proud of the campaign the Liberal Democrats had fought.
Good morning. The main election headlines from Look North. York falls to Labour. Hugh Bailey overturns Conall Gregory's tiny majority to win by more than 6,000. Elsewhere in the region, the Tories hold all their key marginal seats. They keep control of Batley and Spen, Colne Valley, Keighley and Lincoln. The Tories also hold on to Elmet and Leeds North West. Other headlines, Labour cling on to Halifax after a recount, but Alice Marn's majority falls to less than 500. And piling on the votes, Labour storms ahead in Mansfield, taking a majority of just 56 up to one of more than 11,000. So the only seat in this region to change hands was York, the Tories' most marginal seat in the country. Hugh Bailey turned Conall Gregory's 147 majority into a healthy Labour win. The majority of 6,342 showed a swing from Conservative to Labour of 5.1%. Jeremy Hibbard reports.
In York, the Conservatives were defending their smallest majority, just 147 votes. The city was top of Labour's hit list. And while the photographers were preparing for the departure of the Conservative MP, Conall Gregory, and the Liberal Democrats were doing some homework, the Labour candidate Hugh Bailey was in a confident mood. He needed only a tiny swing to Labour to secure victory, but even he was surprised by the size of his eventual majority.
Hugh Bailey, 31,000, it's 31,525.
We put York first. We said that York needed an MP who spoke up for the citizens of York in Parliament and who put York issues first.
I feel that it's the collapse of the Liberal vote has caused this today. Our vote has held up very well. We've been very well supported locally and nationally, and I wish my successor well.
Before leaving, Hugh Bailey told his supporters there was much work to be done, and he said he was confident he could get on and do it, now that York's political status was no longer so finely balanced.
In Batley and Spen, Elizabeth Peacock defied the opinion polls and held on to her seat for the Conservatives. She even managed to increase her majority slightly. Labour's Eunice Durkin came a close second, with the Liberal Democrats well behind. Jake Fowler reports.
Nothing changed in Batley and Spen, but it was a nerve-wracking night for the Conservative Elizabeth Peacock in a seat that was 13th on Labour's hit list. In the end, it proved unlucky for the Labour candidate Eunice Durkin, although her vote was high, more than 26,000. It wasn't enough, and the victorious Mrs. Peacock kept her majority and her seat.
I had a gut feeling that I would hang on. It's something that's difficult to explain. It has no logic at all. But the feeling was there, and that's why, until it was final, I wouldn't even consider making any comments.
The Liberal Democrats had a bad night, polling only 6,000 votes. This one safe Labour area now looks like a solid Tory seat.
The West Yorkshire constituency of Colne Valley re-elected the Conservative MP Graham Riddick with a substantially increased majority. A massive 82% turnout put Labour in second place, relegating the Liberal Democrats to third. As Richard Hewitt reports, the seat had always been considered a three-way fight.
As the ballot boxes went in for the Colne Valley count, a close three-way fight was anticipated. But as the piles of ballot papers were laid out, it was amid an atmosphere of increasing gloom in the Labour and Liberal Democrat camps. The result, when it came, was devastating for both of them. Graham Riddick had confounded the opinion polls and the pundits.
He fought a very, very hard campaign. Every hour, knocking on doors, meeting people, getting out there, and I'm delighted that it's paid off.
Graham Riddick and Sarah! Needless to say, Graham Riddick's supporters were ecstatic.
Labour had hoped to take Lincoln from the Conservative MP Kenneth Carlisle, who'd held it since 1979. Despite Labour's fierce challenge, he managed to hang on, but with a majority reduced by more than 5,000 votes. Tony Rowe reports.
Labour expected to win here to be the biggest party in the Commons, but the opinion polls were wrong. They failed.
Kenneth Melville Carlyle, Conservative, 28,000.
Privately, some of Mr Carlyle's supporters said they were stunned, and he was surprised.
I think it's amazing that to be re-elected in the middle of a recession. Hopefully we're starting to come out of it, and after the community charge, which hit Lincoln people very much.
It's obvious that the Labour Party has not yet convinced people that we have all the right policies on issues like taxation and the economy.
Kenneth Carlyle, a junior defence minister, will now wait to see if he's to be offered a job in the new Conservative government.
Well, there were no such scares for the Tories in Leeds, where they comfortably fought off Labour and Liberal Democrat aspirations in 2 key seats. In Elmet, Spencer Baptiste kept his seat with a majority of more than 2,000 less than in 1987. While in Leeds North West, the Liberal Democrat challenge fizzled out as they slumped to 3rd place behind Labour, leaving Keith Hampson with an increased majority for the Tories. Our political correspondent Peter Lugg reports.
In Leeds, all 8 constituency counts were held in the town hall, and after nearly 5 hours of declarations and speech-making, the standing of the parties was exactly the same at the end as it was when the counting had started. The Liberal Democrats were the first to be frustrated as they saw their target seat, Leeds North West, move even further towards the Tories. They slipped into 3rd place behind Labour as Keith Hampson increased his majority by 2,500. Labour, meanwhile, could do no better in Elmet. They clipped 2,000 off the Tory majority, but the victory was Spencer Baptiste's.
I've always argued that Elmet is the bulwark against which we will break any socialist tide. And we've done it now again for the 3rd time in a row.
So honours remain even. Labour and the Conservatives still share Leeds, 4 seats apiece.
In Sheffield, the city's only Tory MP managed to retain his seat, despite speculation that tactical voting could result in his defeat. Irving Patnick held on comfortably to the Sheffield Hallam seat with a clear 6,000 majority over his closest rival, the Liberal Democrat candidate Peter Gold. The Conservatives also scored successes in Beverley and Brigg and Cleethorpes on Humberside, while Sir Donald Thompson held on to the marginal seat of Colne Valley. Gary Waller also managed to hold on to his Keighley seat, another which Labour was hoping to win. The Tories kept control of Selby and Scarborough in North Yorkshire, while party veteran Sir Marcus Fox ensured his majority stayed above 12,000 in Shipley. Labour, as expected, held on to all their other seats. As well as the 3 Barnsley seats, it was a good night for Labour in Bradford, with Bob Cryer in Bradford South increasing his majority. Labour's environment spokesman Ann Taylor had to wait for a recount in her Dewsbury seat, which she eventually won. Labour also scored successes in Doncaster and Humberside, but Austin Mitchell saw his majority in Grimsby fall by more than 1,200. There was a clean sweep in Hull for Labour, where John Prescott saw off all challengers, increasing his majority. Labour held its seats in Leeds, with John Battle in Leeds West adding 9,000 to his majority, while the leader of Sheffield Council, Clive Betts, secured his place at Westminster in the Sheffield Attercliffe seat. Well, joining me now is our political correspondent, John Turnbull. John, how typical has this region been of the nation as a whole?
Well, I think in terms of share of the poll, it's been quite typical. I think Labour's performance of something like an improvement of 3% round about that area has been pretty much in line with the rest of the country. Where I think it hasn't been typical is that Labour have not won seats here, whereas across the Pennines in the northwest they have won at least a proportion of their target seats. Here, as we've heard, they only won York. The other ones were in a group. There was a sort of group of seats that needed a swing of about between 5 and 6%, the Keithleys, the Calder Valleys, and Labour's increase just wasn't up